Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint by Sing Shong. Chapter 76. The Fifth Scenario. Part 1. Song Minwo's blood dripped onto the ground. The feeling of my blood-soaked fist was dull. Song Minwo was bleeding, but he didn't open his eyes or talk. The shattered flesh seemed to have given up on restoration. Han Suyang muttered, "A scary guy, you killed a werewolf with bare hands?" The other werewolves had already run away or were taken care of by Han Suyang. I looked down at Song Minwo and said, "He hasn't died yet." Now the fourth wall didn't shake when I looked at him. I didn't know if the trauma was resolved, but I could resist it more than in the past. The constellation One Who Overcomes the Late Trials sends encouragement to you. The constellation One Who Overcomes the Late Trials wants to give you his own stigma. Giving me a stigma? Really? The bounty scenario wasn't a single constellation request, so it was surprising to give a stigma as a reward. Of course, I appreciated it. The stigma's self-rationalization has been acquired. The constellation One Who Overcomes the Late Trials smiles with satisfaction at you who has succeeded his stigma. You will now have a defense mechanism that won't be bothered by any trauma. Thanks. I stared absent-mindedly for a bit. The constellation Prisoner of the Golden Headband is grabbing his belly and laughing. Self-rationalization? What did this mean? Are you kidding me? Han Suyang asked, "Hey, aren't you going to kill him?" Eh? I'm talking about that. I looked down at Song Minwo in my hands. Should I kill him? There was no burden, since he was an outside species. The backer of Song Minwo is looking at you. The constellations of Baihyung's channel would like it if I killed him. Many constellations desire your revenge. I looked at Song Mingwu for a while, before putting him down. Let's go. What? Really? Yes. Some constellations are disappointed with your hypocrisy. Many constellations are questioning your judgment. The constellation Secretive Plotter is watching your judgment. You really won't kill him? Won't this bastard have coins? Yes. Then can I kill him? Go ahead. But won't you regret it? Regret? I shrugged and walked towards her. To be exact, it was in the direction that the werewolf group had run away. Perhaps their origin would be at the end of this direction. If my guess was right, the meteorite was what helped transform them into werewolves. The meteorites must be collected to prepare for the disaster scenario. Han Suyang looked after me with a suspicious expression. All of a sudden, the sound of footsteps died up and headed in another direction. It was in the exact direction of Song Minwo. Her avatar. Yes. I thought Han Suyang would do this. I let her do what she want. In return, she would turn a blind eye to my hypocrisy. Then after a while. Shit. What is this? Han Suyang gave a terrible scream and shook. I could tell the messages that were appearing in her head. Perhaps they would be messages like this. The 6th grade outside species Song Minwo has been killed and the Demon King Andres has noticed the murderer's presence. The Demon King Andres will remember the one who dealt the final blow. The Demon King Andres will search for the one who dealt the final blow. Final blow, Han Suyang. Han Suyang looked at me with a pale face and I laughed. I told you that you would regret it. Song Minwo was a member of the 72nd Demon King, Andres household. The 72nd Demon King. The constellations weren't the only strong ones among the star stream. There were some strong people who refused to be subscribes to the heavens and traveled around planets. One of these superpowers was the Demon Kings. You are a really bad jerk. The Demon Kings sought their own households, just like the constellations chose incarnations. Corrupted incarnations could choose to join the household of a Demon King. The werewolf was one of his symbols and was located at the bottom of the 72nd Demon King Andres caste. It was due to Andres' blessing that Song Minwo had the physical regeneration ability. Han Suyang stuttered out, "H, how can I?" "Don't worry. Some people I know were cursed by a demon king like you, but they didn't die right away. Why are you saying it now? Come to think of it, Han Myungo, who was cursed by the demon king, Asmodeus. I didn't know what happened to him. Was he still alive? I think it is good. Andras isn't a very high-ranking demon king. If you are enemies with a demon king, you will get the favor of the absolute good constellations and get more donations. It is a good thing. Will the archangels care? Besides, I don't get along with sponsors and angels. Why? Was it also a demon king? I couldn't help thinking so when I suddenly closed my mouth. What did she just say? You don't get along with sponsors and angels? Han Suyang noticed my gaze and cursed. Damn, my damn mouth. Do you not have a sponsor? It wasn't impossible. I also had no sponsor. In fact, in the first scenario, many of the survivors wouldn't get sponsors. To be precise, they didn't have any choices. However, it was unexpected that a strong person like Han Suyang had no sponsor. I didn't choose one. Isn't it strange to choose from the beginning? I can only pick once. Well, that's right. If the sponsor selection could be postponed, it was better to postpone it. There were many good constellations, and depended on how the person acted in a scenario, they could literally go from a turd to a Mercedes. The sponsor selection occurred once after the first scenario and were regularly implemented before the disaster scenarios occurred. The fifth scenario was a disaster scenario, so Han Suyang would be able to participate in the upcoming second round of the sponsor selection. I raised my hand and asked, "Who will you choose? Is there a constellation you are thinking about?" Han Suyang made a confident expression at my words. Won't you be surprised when you find out? They are already interested in me. Who is it? Was it perhaps the great sage, the equal of heaven? Have you heard of the abyssal black flame dragon? The black flame dragon? The constellation abyssal black flame dragon is looking at your reaction. I hesitated for a moment before replying, yes. He is a good sponsor. The abyssal black flame dragon was the sponsor of the delusional demon Kim Namwon in the original novel. The delusional demon was one of the best fights along with the steel sword, so it wasn't a bad choice. The constellation abyssal black flame dragon is looking at you with a complicated gaze. This guy wasn't interested in me anymore. Han Suyang's eyebrows twitched at my nonchalant tone. What is with this sour expression? Who is your sponsor? No, it is nothing. I was just feeling envious. Really? Really? The character, Han Suyang, has used lie detection LV1. The character Han Suyang has confirmed that the statement is false. Is this real? I didn't care about the abyssal black flame dragon. I just wanted her to get a sponsor. Han Suyang and this thug matched very well. The constellation who likes harems is cheering on you and Han Suyang. 500 coins have been sponsored. Han Suyang's expression distorted, like she heard the same message as me. What is this again? Unfortunately, the wish of the harem constellation wouldn't come true. Han Suyang and I would only be together for the next 10 days. There was a moment of cooperation, but it didn't change that she was a threatening enemy. It looks like we've arrived. After a while, we reached the place that was probably the base of the werewolves. It was near a broadcasting station. There was a bloody smell coming from the narrow forest of buildings. I heard the cries of the werewolves and people in the distance, like a battle was going on. Han Suyang said, "It seems that we are a bit late. Is there a preceding visitor?" I didn't see any werewolves moving around as guards. Once we entered a bit further, a coin farmer that was bigger than Director Yoon's one was installed. The coin farms were the exclusive property of the destroyed world. I was tired of facing these sites all the time. It seemed like the coin harvest was over because there were no surviving people behind bars. Han Suyang was moving ahead when she suddenly grabbed her nose. Yuck, what is this? As we headed through the imprisonment area to the residence of the werewolves, a more horrifying sight awaited us. Severed human thighs were hanging from rubber bands. It was like pork in a butcher's shop, making the purpose obvious. The exclusive skill fourth wall has offset your emotional trauma. I read these scenes in the text, but this was my first time actually seeing them. There was a fixed way for humans to evolve into an outside species. Cannibalism, in other words, to eat their own people. Han Soo-young cursed, "You fucking scum." Most outside species evolved accidentally. Those who couldn't clear the find food sub-scenario usually walked this path. Once they ate a person, they couldn't stop. Those who changed species would no longer feel guilty about killing humans. I stated, "You look upset when you see this." Of course. Who wouldn't be upset? The other prophet said you want to use your information to control the world. Who said that? Han Soo-young sneered and added, "It is just as absurd as you calling me a plagiarist." World domination? It would be good. But my first goal is to prevent the destruction. Why else did I collect the apostles? The apostles were all trash. They were originally trash? Is that my fault? Tang. 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 We reflexively held our breaths. There was a loud sound from in front of us. I would hear the sound of flesh exploding. Tadong. No matter how I thought about it, this was the sound of gunshots. Wasn't the army already wiped out? We ran towards the building towards the gunshots. Even if the army was still intact, it was ridiculous to deal with a werewolf with guns. But the sight in front of me changed the story. Bodies of werewolves were piled up in front of me like a mountain. All of the bodies had bullet wounds. Han Soo-young and I talked almost simultaneously. Attribute bullets. A bullet with the divine attribute? I saw some people pointing guns in the distance. They were armed with modern rifles, and unusually, they were all wearing prison uniforms. Han Soo-young nervously grabbed my collar. "Hey, do you remember me telling you that there was someone like you in San Demon prison?" "Yes. They are her forces." Han Soo-young was pointing to a woman wearing a mask. It would be hard to know the sex if it wasn't for the long hair hanging down, covering most of the body, including the face. She is the leader. It is obvious that she is a reader, but I don't have any information on her. I see. They were from Sia Demon Prison. Then why wasn't this force visible during the struggle for the throne? Han Soo-young opened her mouth while looking at the mountain of werewolf corpses. They are also wanderers. They are quite powerful wanderers, the most powerful wanderers I know. A woman with a gun headed straight to this side. It wasn't the leader that Han Soo-young pointed out. I pulled out Unbroken Faith while Han Soo-young prepared Avatar. The gun of the woman approaching us moved. She leaned back and her muzzled, headed to one of the mountain of werewolf corpses. Do-do-do-do-do. The dead bullets collapsed from the bullets. Then something hidden under the bodies were revealed. This is? There was a glowing stone that was 2 m in length and height. It was one of the meteorites I needed to prevent the disaster. The yellow meteorite was here. This meteorite was also the source of the werewolf's strength. The woman gazed at the meteorite before slowly turning to me. "Are you Kim Dokja?" Chapter 77. The Fifth Scenario. Part 2. Looking closely, the woman seemed quite old. Based on the wrinkles, she wasn't in her 40s, but she was at least in her mid to late 30s. She knew me? How? I was a bit embarrassed, but I maintained my composure as I looked at the woman. "You must be mistaken. My name is Yu Jong-hyuk. Kim Dokja is the name of the guy I hate the most." "Yu Jong-hyuk?" "Yes. So tell your leader not to talk nonsense. Just tell her, even if you're not sure what I mean." I looked to the side and saw Han Soo-young watching me with an absurd expression. I winked at her. If it was Han Soo-young, she would know what to do from now on. The woman opened her mouth. "I already know that you are Kim Dokja. Stop the unnecessary lies." The character Han Soo-young has confirmed that the statement is true. Han Soo-young nodded towards me. This woman came because she knew for certain who I was. The king said that she will entrust this meteorite to you. It was unexpected. She knew me, and now she was giving me the meteorite. Who are you? We are the people of the Wanderer King. That woman over there is your king? The woman nodded. I looked at the tall masked woman in the distance. Looking closely, I felt a sense of déjà vu. But there was something strange. King. You don't seem to have a flag? The king doesn't dwell on such things. What was with this answer? The woman continued speaking. The king said that we will take care of the disaster in the north. But she will leave the other 4 disasters to you. Before I could ask anything, the woman turned and left like her words were over. Han Suyang shouted, "Hey! What are you suddenly saying? Shouldn't you explain it before you go?" Despite the shouts, the woman kept walking away with turning back. Han Suyang looked at me and asked, "What is this? Do you know that woman?" "How can that be?" I quietly activated character list. This person isn't registered in character list. You can check the information of the person by updating character list. Do you want to update it? It seemed that the update cycle was back. I nodded. The update has been completed. Some people will be added to the dictionary. Then a window popped up. Plus. Character information, name, Cho Young Ran. Age, 37 years old. Constellation support, First Sorcerer of Joseon. Private attribute, escaped prisoner, general, officer of justice, rare. Exclusive skills, prison escape LV3, patience LV6, execution time LV3, shooting LV4. Stigma, transformation occult art LV2. Overall stats, physique LV30, strength LV34, agility LV36, magic power LV28. Overall evaluation, the current comprehensive evaluation is currently in progress. Asterisk starter pack is currently applied. Asterisk a growth package is currently applied. Plus. Look at this, the First Sorcerer of Joseon? The constellation First Sorcerer of Joseon is looking at you with wary eyes. I didn't think there would already be a woman with John Wuqi as a sponsor. John Wuqi was a Taoist sorcerer during the Joseon dynasty. In addition, she had the fairly good attribute of Officer of Justice, although it was less than the judge. If the subordinate was this good, what was the king like? I immediately looked at the tall woman. The information of this person can't be read in character list. This person isn't registered in character list. The moment I met the gaze of the woman in the mask, a stinging pain flashed through my head. I reflexively looked away from the woman. My heart beat quickly. The fourth wall instinctively shook. The woman caused an even greater shaking than Song Minwo. Despite having self-rationalization, I didn't want to take the risk because I wasn't sure of the stigma's performance. Han Suyang asked me anxiously, "Hey, what is it?" "Never mind." The fourth wall responded to people who had an important influence on me in real life. In other words, that woman was someone I knew. But there was only one person in this world who gave me a bigger trauma than Song Minwo. I see. As expected, she survived. However, I didn't expect her to be in Seoul. It was why she was able to make a large force and why they were wearing prison uniforms. It was convincing if it was that person. The wanderers soon began to move. They aligned themselves and headed back the way they came. It was a march with no hesitation. A loyalty could be felt from the group. The leader moved at the forefront of the group. A crown like the tyrant king, a woman who was different from the king of beauty. I looked at the ruins that they moved through. There were the broken coin farms and the survivors they spared. They had placed blankets and necessities beside the survivors. The survivors watched the leaving wanderers with awe-filled eyes. I had forgotten. A person didn't need a flag or to sit on the throne to become king. In this kingless world, there was still a king. After a while, I examined the yellow meteorite they left behind. A yellow meteorite. The meteorite, also called the moonstone, was usually a star pierce that hovered in other dimensions. It was truly the same as I read in the novel. It was from the exhilarating magic power felt when I touched it, the faint light from the opaque interior and the white stripes all over the meteorite. The yellow meteorite clearly had the power to counter the disaster. Then a system message was heard. The moonstone wants to provide you with a high-level strength. I refused the meteorite's offer and the power returned to the meteorite. The moonstone basically had the power of the night and the outside species would receive this power. Perhaps the cannibals who received the power of the night were able to evolve into the outside species, the werewolves. The moonstone gives off a feeling of familiarity. However, the real use of this meteorite wasn't simply to evolve the outside species. Even a few hundred werewolves couldn't prevent the future disasters. Of course, a few thousand would help, but then another disaster would come from the high number of outside species and the power of the demon kings. I feel like a volunteer. Hey, did you find something? As I was examining the meteorite, Han Soo-young was taking care of the survivors lying nearby. It was a little unexpected, but she was probably targeting coins. The constellations of the absolute good system are touched by Han Soo-young's good works. In a place filled with the Demon King's household, the dominations would be bigger than usual. Indeed, a human's double-sidedness was profound. Among the constellations of the absolute good system, there might be the abyssal black flame dragon. The second sponsor selection was coming up, so Han Soo-young would be looking at him. I looked around and said, "The avatars are useful." Dozens of avatars were quickly organizing the surroundings. The corpses of the outside species were burned, while the terrible cages and human butcher stores were also demolished. She earned coins while getting a nosebleed. Han Soo-young wiped the blood and asked, "When are you going to tell me?" "What?" "I'm talking about that." I realized her question wasn't about the meteorite. "Are you still worrying about that?" "How can I not care?" There were two types of readers that she didn't know about. In addition, there seemed to be a connection between the two. It was natural for Han Soo-young, who was the last to get off, to pay attention. "Who knows?" "Don't you know?" "I only know the woman, the leader of the group." "The Wanderer King?" I nodded and said, "That person isn't someone who got off." To be precise, she never read the original. "What? Then how does she know the contents of the plot?" "By talking directly to me." Han Soo-young looked like she had been hit in the back of the head with a hammer. "You told others about the story?" "Why?" "I needed something to tell her when I met her." I gave her a moment before continuing. "Because I had nothing else to say to her." Maybe she sensed my dark mood, making Han Soo-young hesitate as she was about to question me. She probably had a lot that she wanted to ask me. Who was the woman and what was her relationship with me? Han Soo-young was silent for a while before speaking again. "I don't know what your relationship with that woman is, but is it okay to leave her alone? If there are more people besides us who knows the future." I understood her concerns, but it should be fine. At the very least, that woman was a person with principles, and she couldn't carelessly use the future information. I knocked on the moonstone and opened my mouth. "Rather, there is something more important. From now on, we will wake this up." "What? This thing?" Han Soo-young watched me like I was insane. "You want to wake up the disaster? Why are you so startled? Didn't you do it before?" Han Soo-young had incited the Night of the Prophets and awakened the fire dragon, Lesser Igneal. "Hey! I picked a small disaster." "This one, it isn't a disaster." "Then what is it?" "It looks like you were negligent in your plagiarism. Don't you remember? Do you really not know what will appear here when the scenario starts?" Han Soo-young stared at me before turning on her phone and reading her own novel. This, perhaps? Have you realized? You copied it well." "Shut up. But the main scenario hasn't opened yet. Is it okay to do this? Moreover, what if a plausibility request occurs?" "It won't happen." The intermediate Dakibi hates you. Then I will deal with him. Right now, he would be busy being reprimanded by the Bureau. We will start injected mana. Based on my calculations, it will hatch in 10 hours. I will take 4 hours and you will take 6 hours. Why do I have to inject mana for 6 hours? Isn't your magic power level higher? At this moment, the number of avatars decreased dramatically. I noticed something. Tell me honestly. What level is your magic power? Why should I tell you? It is information needed to clear the scenario. The provisions of the temporary contract will take effect. Han Suyang's expression distorted. Level 55. I was honestly surprised. I thought it would be over level 40 because she could control dozens of avatars, but level 5, this was almost approaching the scenario limit. Her physique and strength were relatively low, so she must have been putting all her coins into magic power. I will change it. I will take 2 hours. You will take 8 hours. Hey! That's unfair. And now I have run out of magic power. I opened the Dakibi bag and bought a few intermediate magic power recovery potions. Then drink this. What is this? Coin item. Is your sponsor huge? You are just giving something like this to me? I am the one who is big. Han Suyang glanced at me. Did you put anything strange in it? Then I'll start first. I touched the moonstone and started injecting magic power. 10 hours later, the guy inside the meteorite would wake up. How long was I asleep? I opened my eyes at the sound of someone waking up. Hey, get up quickly. That guy has started to move. Han Suyang shouted with a nervous face while touching the meteorite. The meteorite had started to crack. It was a phenomenon similar to when the fire dragon broke out of the meteorite. It wasn't an aggressive reaction, but if I said one word wrong, both of us might die here. A brilliant light emerged from the moonstone, lifting some of the darkness of the night. It was an awakening of a powerful presence that gave off a heavy pressure just looking at it. Chapter 78. The Fifth Scenario. Part 3. The broken pieces of moonstone fell to the ground. A being scattering a silver mane was hatching. If he was a cub, I could control him using the imprinting phenomenon. But this being wasn't such a naive creature. You have encountered a creature from a different world for the first time in this scenario. Affinity with the species from a different world has increased. 2,000 coins have been rewarded. You have received a bonus skill for smooth communication with the otherworld species. Otherworld Interpreter LV1 has been acquired. I could hear Han Suyang gulp next to me. It was natural to be nervous since the encounter with the otherworld species was the prelude to the fifth scenario. It was completely different from the previous scenarios. The slightest mistake in the fifth scenario could cause all of Seoul to disappear. The exclusive skill Otherworld Interpreter LV1 is activated. The effect of the item protection symbol of the Immuntar has increased understanding of the specific language. The item I got from the fire dragon would be helpful from now on. Automatic interpretation has started. I heard a voice from the shining moonstone. #%, $, damn, already? The creature curled up inside the moonstone grumbled and raised its body. The silver mane reminded me of a wolf at first glance, but I knew he was different from a wolf. Above all, I knew the species of this person. They are 3 meters tall. The dominant species of the world Kronos that can transform using the moonstone at night. They are fighters with monstrous physical strength who use the power of the wind. One of the 5 dominant species of Kronos. I am the great first wolf. In Kronos, they call the first wolf Immuntar. I am Lycaon of the Immuntar. There was a creepy breathing sound in the darkness of the night, causing the surroundings to be still. I made eye contact with him while Han Suyang hid behind me. Of course, I didn't back down. The exclusive skill, Character List is activated. Plus. Character information, name, Lycaon Isparang. Age, 371 years old. Constellation support, shadow of a destroyed world. Private attribute, noble immuntar, hero, humiliated survivor, rare. Exclusive skills, Way of the Wind LV9, Advanced Weapons Training LV9, Roar of the Battlefield LV8, Sage's Insight LV4, Steel Skin LV8, Acting LV4. Stigma, Destruction Delivery LV1. Overall stats, Physique LV75, Strength LV75, Agility LV75, Magic Power LV75. Overall evaluation, one of the 5 dominant species of the destroyed Chronos. After losing his world, he invested in the star stream and became a guide in the scenario. He is characterized by always looking at the world with eyes filled with remorse. Plus, as expected, the hero of another world had great skills and stats. The average stats was level 75. He exceeded the current limit of the scenario. He was the goal of many representatives. Lycaon's blue eyes looked down at me like I was interesting. You are the ones who woke me up. I nodded. I see. Is it finally time? Congratulations on clearing the tutorial scenarios, warriors of this world. It sounded like a tutorial. It was funny how he imitated the Dakibi for dramatic effect. There was no tutorial in this world. Every scenario was an actual event and the dead couldn't come back again. Then what type of tutorial existed? Those who are facing extinction. First, I deeply regret that disaster has come to your world. Lycaon spoke while looking up at the sky. He was looking at the Great Hall over Seoul, Korea. A huge vortex reminiscent of a black hole was gradually increasing its volume every moment. Lycaon would have also seen the Great Hall on the day his world was destroyed. All guides in the scenarios were those who lost their homes to the scenarios. Since I am here, you can rest assured. I am a guide to stop the destruction of this world. I will train you to prepare for the disaster and give you the necessary instructions. And it came out quite hastily, but he was good at reciting the words. He probably got a manual Gromodakibi. Lycaon suddenly stopped talking. By the way, you are the only ones who woke me up. It is just us. Strange. The 4th scenario isn't cleared? If it had been cleared properly, the 5 guides, including myself, would be hatched in the same place. Where is the owner of the Absolute Throne? He was right. Originally, the 5 guides, including Lycaon, would gather as soon as the master of the Absolute Throne was born. I spoke to Lycaon. We have no king. There is no king. Did the master of the Absolute Throne die? No way. At present, there is no way to kill the master of the Absolute Throne. Lycaon expressed his disbelief in a threatening manner. There was no owner of the Absolute Throne from the beginning. What does that mean? We cleared the 4th scenario without getting the Absolute Throne. Flames appeared in Lycaon's eyes. Are you lying to me right now? Such a thing is impossible. The 4th scenario doesn't end until someone takes the throne. There is also the method of destroying the Absolute Throne. Lycaon's expression stiffened. He seemed to grasp my words and his eyes widened. Perhaps? The embarrassment of such a noble hero was really worth seeing. His silver mane quivered as he looked closely at me. The numerous constellations, surely you didn't destroy the throne. That's right. How could you do such a terrible thing? Lycaon let out many curses that I couldn't hear properly. Han Suyang looked at the bellowing Lycaon and whispered to me, "Hey, was it that serious?" For you. Han Suyang also received Otherworld Interpreter and heard the conversation. Lycaon screamed before I could answer. Why did you do that? Now there is no one in the world under the banner of that great god? No. Ah. The Starstream constellations didn't care about Kronos. Now this world is ruined. Living things with less intelligence than a kobold should do their jobs. I felt scorn as I watched the despairing Lycaon. Yes, this was the essence of these guys. On the surface, they were dispatched to help this world. However, they had a separate purpose that I would never let happen. Prince of the Immuntar, Lycaon Isparang. It is too early to be frustrated. The prideful Prince of the Immuntar immediately responded to the change in my attitude. He growled out angrily. Cheeky human. Show respect in front of a great species. You don't know the weight of your sin. Lycaon, didn't you see anything when your world perished? The Immuntar were the ruling species of Kronos, not Earth. Lycaon's expression stiffened. I didn't miss this gap and continued, there were 5 disasters that destroyed your world. What? The southern continent of Kronos where you lived was destroyed by the dragon. Right? Lycaon's eyes filled with disbelief. How do you know this? Fire Dragon Igneal. The disaster of burning hell. It is the name of the disaster that destroyed your world. The small disaster that I killed, Lesser Igneal, was originally a disaster. A single flame could turn a small city into a sea of fire, and a single flap of its wings could destroy a lower species. The southern continent of Kronos was destroyed by him. The fire dragon that woke up from a meteorite. Lycaon gritted his teeth. You are speaking like it is someone else's story. You will regret it. Pretty soon, your world will also struggle in that hot hellfire. Don't worry. Igneal won't come down to this world. What? I have already killed him. There will be no burning hell disaster in this world. Lycaon had a bemused expression, like he heard his home had been brought back. That is the best joke I've ever heard. Is there such a joke in this world? Is it fun to joke about the world that will soon cease to exist? Well, of course not. I pulled out a blue-colored medallion. Then like magic, Lycaon's laughter subsided. The protection symbol of the Immuntar. Lycaon's shaking hands reached out to take the medallion. Why, how do you have this? The protection symbol of the Immuntar was proof that a person had hunted a disaster dragon. Lycaon of the Immuntar. Pay respects to the protector. Lycaon's body slowly fell. First his knees touched the ground, slowly followed by his head. There was a severe shaking of his eyes, like he couldn't admit it. Do it properly. Before long, his head touched the ground. He was over 3 meters tall, so it wasn't until he fell down that his eyes were lower than mine. I looked down at Lycaon. This was the useful part of catching the fire dragon. Han Suyang wasn't able to grasp the situation yet and looked at Lycaon with confused eyes. I was almost killed by Han Suyang's brutality, but she ended up making things easier. Lycaon spoke in a quivering voice. Great Dragon Hunter. With the benefit of hindsight, I would like to ask you to forgive my rudeness. My name is Kim Dokja. Once again, I thought that my name wasn't that great. This would be a great scene if my name was Yu Jonghyuk. I added a quick remark to diffuse the awkward atmosphere. Lycaon. There is something I need you to do. Lycaon carefully looked up. Teach me the way of the wind, which is the secret technique of your people. Lycaon's eyes slowly became bigger. This was my purpose behind hatching Lycaon. The southern disaster of the fire dragon had disappeared, so the first disaster in the 5th scenario would surely be the east disaster. In order to prevent the catastrophe in the east, I needed to gain the secret technique of the Immuntar. Way of the wind, it was the only answer to the disaster of the east, the disaster of questions. An hour later, I explained the situation to Han Suyang, who hadn't been able to follow the conversation. Then the medallion you got from killing the fire dragon is an important thing for them? Yes. I still don't understand, the fire dragon you killed at that time was one of the disasters? That's right. Then in the 5th scenario, we have to prevent 4 instead of 5 disasters? You seem to understand yet not understand? Han Suyang frowned. I still don't understand. Didn't you kill the lesser Igneal? Isn't he a deteriorated dragon, so why is he the disaster? Is this also a development of ways of survival? Everything that hatches from a disaster meteor is a disaster. That guy came out instead of Igneal, so Igneal won't appear in this disaster. In addition, Igneal didn't appear in the original. Igneal's hatchling came out. It is only the 5th scenario, so how can something like that wake up already? You speak well. Are you a spokesman for ways of survival? Are you actually the writer? The scenario difficulty was ridiculous, but it was adjusted so that it could be cleared if people risked their lives. Of course, the adjustment was carefully controlled. The lesser Igneal, the deteriorated version of the hatchling, had annihilated the prophets, which could be called the elite troops at the time. Was that all? I was once killed by that dragon. If it wasn't for the king of no killing, I wouldn't be standing here. If lesser Igneal had been released into Seoul and continued to level up, Seoul would have ended up the same as Lycaon's hometown. Of course, Han Soo-young had no knowledge of such matters and was busy complaining. Anyway, aren't the disasters a bigger deal than I thought? I have a lot of trouble grasping the scale because of the way it was expressed in Ways of Survival. We were lucky with the fire dragon. The disasters that will come will be in their original state. Terrible beings will appear. It was pleasant to see the expression of the plagiarist writer at the word original. Then what should we do? We have to use that guy. I looked at Lycaon, who was preparing for the training in a distant place. Han Soo-young asked, he looks strong. Do you want him to fight? That guy is a coward. In addition, the guides are prohibited from fighting against disasters of another world. We have to take care of our work on our own. I heard Lycaon calling out to me. Protector, I am ready. Protector was the title for the owner of the medallion. I told him to call my name a few times, but Lycaon didn't yield. From now on, I will teach you the secret technique of my clan, the Way of the Wind. Way of the Wind. It was a hidden skill that allowed the user to use the wind like their own limbs. Among the other species, only those with the protection symbol of the Immuntar could learn this skill. Yu Jonghyuk was originally scheduled to obtain this, but not this time. I couldn't give the strong person all the good skills. Then I will start. For the next 3 hours, I sweated hard to learn the skill. It would be nice if the system had a message like, would you like to learn the skill? But this wasn't possible. It was only possible to gain the skill by learning it directly. I had read the novel, so I was able to follow Lycaon's movements a little bit. To be exact, I thought I was following it. Approximately 1 more hour passed. Lycaon hesitated before opening his mouth. Protector. I'm sorry to say this, but